Out of everything that I've shot, motorsport photography is hands down the most challenging. That's because it goes beyond just capturing a nice photo of a car on a track. It's about showcasing the motion and capturing the essence of speed in the images, which is why it's so important to have your camera settings dialed in. In motorsport photography, there are basically two types of action shots: freeze frames and panning shots. A freeze frame is when the car looks completely still, even though it's still moving. Freeze frames require a higher shutter speed, which freezes the action and almost feels like time has stopped. Freeze frames work really well for capturing cars in the paddock, on the straightaway, and things like that. The trick is to find a sweet spot with the shutter speed where the car is still in focus, yet the tires have a slight blur, conveying a sense of motion while still maintaining a sharp image. If you're not sure where to set your shutter speed, I'd set it anywhere between 1/300th to 1/500th of a second and adjust based on the results. Just be careful not to overdo it, or you'll end up with a car that looks like it's parked on the racetrack. To effectively capture speed and motion in a photo, you need to do a panning shot. Panning is when you use your camera to track the car's movement, blurring the background while keeping the car in focus. As opposed to freeze frames, which require a fast shutter speed, panning shots require a low shutter speed to create the motion blur effect. The combination of a slow shutter speed coupled with a camera motion following a fast-moving object makes this a very difficult shot to master. What I recommend doing is start with a higher shutter speed of, say, 1/20th of a second and gradually work your way down to 1/60th of a second. In addition to shutter speed, there are a few other settings that will help get better panning shots. The first is setting your camera to continuous shooting or burst mode. Make sure that your camera is set to high speed burst so it can shoot several images per second. And this just increases the chances of capturing an image of the car in focus. On the subject of focus, let's talk about your focus settings. The biggest challenge in motorsport photography is getting shots that are in focus. That's why it's really helpful to have your focus settings dialed in. For panning shots where I'm maintaining the same distance between the cars, I'll use manual focus. For other types of shots where the distance between myself and the car changes, like a head-on shot, I'll set it to autofocus. This way the camera will continually refocus as it tracks the car. Mirrorless cameras like my Fuji X-H2 and Fuji X-T4 have amazing autofocus tracking modes that do a great job of following the subject once you've made your selection. This can sometimes have mixed results, which is why you want to make sure that your focus settings are set up correctly. Set your camera to continual autofocus mode and set the focus mode to area. I set my tracking sensitivity and autofocus speed to high so it stays locked onto the subject and refocuses quickly. If your camera has the option, turn on subject detection and select automobile. Even with all these camera settings optimized, it's critical to begin tracking your subject before releasing the shutter. Make sure you align your camera with the approaching vehicle and smoothly follow its path. Time the shutter release as it reaches the desired spot, utilizing the continuous high speed mode to capture multiple images. It's really important that you maintain a steady pan and not move the camera up and down. To help with this, I recommend using either a tripod or a monopod. The aperture setting on your camera determines not only the amount of light that is let in, but how much of the image is in focus. For panning shots, I recommend using a large aperture, one with a low f-stop such as f2.8, that will help create a nice bokeh effect and blur out any distracting backgrounds. A narrow aperture, one with a higher f-stop, anywhere between f.4 to f.8, is ideal for capturing details or photographing multiple cars, but depending on your shutter speed can result in a loss of light. And though I mainly shoot in manual mode, there are times when I'll set the camera to aperture priority so it will auto adjust the aperture for me. If you need to have a narrow aperture with a high shutter speed, that's where your ISO comes in. The ISO setting on your camera affects how sensitive the camera sensor is to light. Generally speaking, you want to have a low ISO setting, and I usually keep it around 100 to 400. By doing so, you're ensuring that your images are filled with intricate details while minimizing the presence of unwanted noise. The white balance on your camera determines how the colors of your image will appear. Setting the correct white balance will ensure that your colors will look natural. I would recommend setting your white balance to auto or daylight, and this will just make sure that the colors of your photos look accurate. The racetrack is a fast-paced environment, and you don't want to waste a lot of time fumbling around with your camera trying to change settings. To avoid this, it's important to pre-program specific settings for different situations. For example, I have one setting specifically optimized for panning shots and another setting for shots that require a fast shutter speed. Both are configured to burst mode, allowing me to capture multiple shots in quick succession. I also have a separate manual focus setting for capturing other types of images such as shots of drivers, parked cars, and scenes around the paddock. So now that you have your camera all set up, let's talk about how to get some great shots around the racetrack. Anticipation is crucial in sports photography, and this holds true especially for motorsports. If you're not familiar with the track, I'd advise to arrive early and observe the practice rounds. Different areas at different times of the day will yield different results. Note where the sun moves and how it affects different areas of the track throughout the day. I'd recommend coming to the same area at different times of the day to see how the movements of the sun affect the exposure. This way you can plan where to be at certain times of the day for the best light. When it comes to circular tracks, the curves often generate the most action. As cars try to navigate a turn, the slower pace can also be leveraged to your advantage. Turns also provide opportunities to film multiple cars in one shot. Straightaways work really well for capturing panning shots. Make sure you're not too close and that you have enough distance so that you can smoothly follow the car. Whether shot from above or below, hillside landscapes also work really well. Areas with lots of vegetation, such as trees, can add an extra layer of creativity to your shots. To really maximize your motorsport photography, experiment with these settings and find what yields the best results that match your style and preferences. Now keep in mind, you do have to take a lot of photos to get one really good one. If 10% of my images are usable, it's a pretty good day. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead and smash that like button and also hit the subscribe button to be the first to get real-life, actionable tips on how to improve your videography and photography skills. My name is Andrew Cooper at andrewcoopervideo.com. I'll see you next time. Take care.